So good afternoon, we're here with Fred Bassnett, Retail Sector Specialist at UK Trade and Investment. So good afternoon, Fred.
And good afternoon to you too.
So World Retail Congress in Rome, lots of talk about ownership, retail challenges. What have been some of your big takeouts for, and I guess it's relevant for the work you do advising British businesses in international markets?
Yeah, I think at this year's World Retail Congress, it was completely on pitch. I think one of the most important topics is internationalisation of businesses. As we already know, in the United Kingdom, we have one of the most sophisticated retail markets in the world, but it doesn't mean that it's not overshopped. And for many retailers in the UK, the way forward has to be through internationalisation, and whether that be through an omnichannel approach or whether it be through an online approach. Quite irrelevant at this moment in time, in the sense that internationalisation will become an important part of any major retail business in the UK. As we've heard from a number of the speakers, there are complications when you attempt to go into international markets. Those complications are different for each company. It would be fantastic if we had a perfect model that worked for everybody. We don't. So therefore, UKTI work very, very hard with individual companies to try and introduce them in many cases to either potential partners or operators in a marketplace who understand the local market.
I was going to ask about that because the work that Planet Retail and Oxford University did, we yesterday talked about trusted retailer becomes really important for shoppers in emerging markets. You know, they need to trust that retailer. So presumably that backs up what you see in terms of entering a new market as an unknown quantity.
Absolutely. One of the things that we are fortunate to have in the United Kingdom is the British heritage, and therefore we find quite frequently many markets in the world, for instance the Chinese, when they look at a British brand or a British product, they automatically feel that there is trust in that brand. But to be successful in the China market, we need to make sure that should British companies enter that market, they quite often need to work with trusted partners in that particular market. So in other words, we've seen some changes here in the UK recently. You've seen the situation where House of Fraser have been acquired by a Chinese company. That Chinese company is already in its own right has a successful department store division, and therefore the integration between House of Fraser and the Chinese department store group will be vitally important. I can see real potential opportunities there where the Chinese retailer that now own House of Fraser will not only be looking to take House of Fraser into China, but there may be some reverse scenario where the Chinese retailer may be looking to bring some Chinese brands into the United Kingdom. An example of a Chinese brand in the United Kingdom, approximately 3 years ago, a company called Bozadeng opened a store just off Oxford Street. And the Bozadeng store has been there now for about 3 years. It's taken time for the brand to become established, but it's becoming stronger and stronger, and therefore that's one of the reverse scenarios, a Chinese retailer already operating in London.
Right. And I was going to ask you, one of the big news stories this week has been Tesco's, selling its South Korean business. Been rumoured for some time, and obviously the deal's been done this week. What learnings do you take from that? Does that just show how tough it can be for British businesses internationally, or are there other opportunities here?
I think when you look at the Tesco situation, and Tesco will have made that decision based on the new management team that are in Tesco, and they will be looking to get the profitability of Tesco back in line. They may have felt that the operation in Korea was a bridge too far, in the sense that it might have been difficult to manage. It may not have been making money, similar to the operation that they sold in the United States a couple of years ago. So I think we will see changes in ownership on brands, and it's something that will inevitably happen. There will be organisations across the globe that will look to acquire businesses. So yes, I see more businesses being acquired by international owners. One only has to look at the conglomerate Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, and you look at the number of brands that are now in their portfolio, and they have a number of British brands in their portfolio. Thomas Pink, for example, is part of that group.
Right. Okay. Great. And final question: what what sort of speakers or themes or topics do you think should be covered this time next year? What's on the radar of the businesses you work with?
Oh, I think it's very much very similar. I think next year when we have World Retail Congress, which I understand is going to be in Dubai, I think we're going to get a different mix of delegates, and therefore I think many of the topics that have been covered at Rome will be the same topics, because the growth of e-commerce and omnichannel across the globe, the opportunities there is quite amazing. If you look at the UK at the moment, I think current numbers will show that we're probably doing 16% or thereabouts of all UK retail is done online. That's probably in line with the US at the moment, but in other parts of the globe, online retailing is probably less, in some cases, less than 1%. If you took the average across the globe, it's probably less than 2%. You're probably in a better position to comment on that than myself. So there's a huge amount of scope in the online and mobile sales side. And of course, my own personal thoughts on that is that for a retailer to be totally successful, one needs to have an omnichannel approach, because I think the consumer also wants to see a retail business with bricks and mortar on the ground, and it comes back to the trust factor that you mentioned. The consumers want to know that that business is a proper business.